Welcome back. So this is the second part of the 7-part series on how apartment locating is actually revolutionizing real estate. So in this video, we're going to talk all about why hiring an apartment locator is actually beneficial. So whether you're a renter interested in renting your own apartment for yourself or for your family, or you're a licensed real estate agent that is looking to better understand, why leveraging the apartment locating niche could add a lot of value into your career and life, you're probably going to get a ton of value from this video. You will be surprised that some of the things that we will share in this video probably didn't come to mind, right, when you think about how an apartment locator typically helps their clientele. So stay tuned and let's get this started right now. All right, so maybe you turned 18 and you're finally moving out of your parents' house, right? And you're looking to rent your first apartment. Maybe you graduated college and you're looking to rent your first apartment. Maybe you're just looking to rent an apartment in general from some other circumstance, right? So we all know that an apartment locator will basically help you find the best deal and match you with an apartment that will fit your needs accordingly, and how the service is 100% free to the client or the renter that actually chooses to use an apartment locator as representation. We all know that, right? That it's free service, and that's why it's great. But we're actually going to break that down and go a little bit deeper and show you other things that are very beneficial, and then break those things down so you have a comprehensive understanding on how an apartment locator can really make your life a whole lot easier. So let's get into the first thing. So you're probably asking yourself, what is the difference between a realtor and an apartment locator and a commercial agent, etc., right? The thing here is that every real estate agent job title sort of focuses on a sub niche to better serve their market and then just really become an expert in whatever that little field is, right? So a realtor obviously will help you find a house to buy or a house to sell, and they list it on the MLS, right? That's sort of their main focus. And actually realtors break it down even deeper and usually specialize in certain zip codes or certain areas of the city, right, to really understand that portion of the market and then better your experience if you're interested in the zones that they service, right? So that's what realtors do. They focus on houses, right? So you would contact a realtor if you're interested in buying or selling or listing a house. Now, if you look at a commercial agent, they're probably going to help you find commercial deals, right? So if you're a company and you're looking to rent space or commercial space for your business or sell a commercial space, you would go ahead and then contact a commercial agent because they specialize in that sort of thing, right? So with those two things being true, someone would hire and ask an apartment locator to help them with their apartment search if they're interested in renting an apartment, right? So the difference here is that these different job titles focus on one primary objective, right? So you would work with an apartment locator because an apartment locator focuses on studying the best deals in their city, right? So that's the big difference, right? It's kind of similar to hiring a doctor, right? If you've got like a brain issue, you would go to a brain doctor, right? Or like a neurosurgeon, right? If you have like a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist, right? If you have general, not really an issue, but you want to know how healthy you are, you go to a generalist, right? So that's kind of similar with license holders, real estate license holders, right? If you want commercial, you go to the commercial agent. If you're interested in houses, you go to the realtor. And if you're looking for apartment deals, you would go to an apartment locator. So same analogy there. I think you understand and get the picture. So let's move on to the next benefit. All right, so the second benefit is an apartment locator will actually know how to find the best rent in an apartment, right? So this is what I mean by that. I've been in the field for 7 years, right? So what I understand differently as opposed to other license holders that might focus on something else, or the everyday person that's not a licensed apartment locator, is that actually going online to the apartment complex website and then checking out their live pricing section on their website and manipulating certain factors within the website interface is actually the best way to find the best price ever. And it kind of requires some time and some effort to really go in there and play around with the lease terms, whether it's a 10 or 11 or 12 or 14-month lease, and then the move-in dates, right? So if you just call up an apartment and ask them what the best price is for whatever apartment for whatever move-in date, they're going to give you a general answer, but no one's really going to go inside of the live pricing dynamic, change up the lease terms, change up the move-in date, 3, 4, 5 days in advance, and really compare things for you, because it takes a lot of time. And these apartment staff, they get bombarded with calls by other realtors and clients that are interested in their community. They also have team meetings, etc. So a lot of these professionals have, very busy schedules, and if you're looking to rent at an apartment community that you really like or that you really fell in love with, it's really best to go ahead and then do all the manipulating on their live pricing by yourself. You wouldn't really know that unless you worked in the industry or you work with an apartment locator that truly understands how the business works, right? So that's one overlooked thing, and that's definitely a benefit. All right, so here's a third benefit. You probably would have never actually thought of this unless you've leased an apartment in a very poor service location, right? So let me break that down a little bit, and hopefully you learn this, right? Definitely pay attention to this benefit, because when this happens to you, it's like the worst thing ever, right? An apartment locator, if they're competent, which usually we all are because we live and breathe apartments, right? They will actually check if your cell phone reception is strong enough in your particular unit and if your Wi-Fi connection is strong, right? One time I actually had a client who leased at a very, very premium rent location in a city in Austin. It was called The Domain. They had like a Class A building inside of the Domain, and they were paying much extra over market rent to be in this nice shopping center sort of location with restaurants and bars and shopping like right next to their doorstep, right? So they paid a premium for it. But what ended up happening is that they leased the unit in like the corner of this building towards the back that had like no cell phone reception, whether you got AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or Sprint or any of them, right? It had like no cell phone reception unless you stood in the corner of the apartment, right? So you would never really know to check for this unless you like really worked in the industry and this happened to you somewhere in your own leasing history, which is very rare, or if you're an apartment locator and you see these things on a daily basis, right? So if you work with an apartment locator, they're probably going to check and make sure that your particular unit has strong cell phone reception, right? And if you work from home, or if you take business calls, or if you just don't like to be super annoyed and frustrated all the time, then an apartment locator will probably most likely have your back and check to make sure the unit has strong cell phone reception, because when this happens and you sign a lease, you're not going to get out of your lease just because your cell phone reception is poor, right? So definitely that is a big benefit. And the same thing goes for Wi-Fi as well. Some areas just have dead zones, and it really, really just sucks when you lease a unit and no one ever told you that, and like the building staff didn't tell you that because they didn't know, because it's not like they know, and test the reception and how strong it is in their, one out of their 400 units in their building, right? So it's very important to work with an apartment locator, so that way they can watch your back with little things that you would not really have normally thought of unless you worked in the industry. All right, so here's a fourth benefit, right? A lot of the times, base rent is what normal people that are looking to rent an apartment normally compare to see if it's within their budget, right? But it won't get overlooked if you're working with an apartment locator is all the other realistic costs that aren't just upfront sort of laid out, right? So what do I mean by that? What are the hidden costs that might make your base rent more than what it really ought to be or what you think it is? The first thing is like, well, the water. In some buildings, usually older buildings, the water is allocated. So that means basically out of the building block that you're renting in, the total water bill throughout all tenants gets divided by how many occupants are in the unit. So this means that whether or not you actually use water or go on a vacation for 2 months, you're still paying a fraction and a portion of the water bill, whether or not you use water. This always ends up actually making your water bill more than normal if it was, let's say, sub-metered and if it was paid for your own usage, right? So an apartment locator, by utilizing their own intelligence and their pay database, will upfront probably tell you if your water is allocated or sub-metered, which thus will save you more money when you actually consider apples to apples, if you can really afford the apartment that you're interested in. because you've probably already shared your realistic budget and your qualification with your trusted apartment locator. So that's a big deal, the water. But the second big deal really is the utilities, right? If you lease a Class C or a Class B building, which are older, slightly more rundown apartment buildings, typically, a building that old won't just revamp all of their AC machinery, that runs your AC, which is the biggest cost of your utilities, is the giant generator in your unit that pumps out AC, right? Especially if you live in a super hot state like Texas or like Phoenix, Arizona or something. So with this being said, if you're leasing an older unit with sort of outdated, non-energy efficient machinery, then you're probably going to pay up to $200 more on your electricity, as opposed to a Class A brand new energy efficient community, which will really impact the total cost that you're going to pay every month, even over and outside of your base rent, right? So an apartment locator will definitely have your back and then help you compare apples to apples, if you can really afford which apartment over which apartment, because they will already factor in if the water is submetered or allocated, and then the utility savings based on how energy efficient the machinery is. So that is a big benefit that no one really thinks about unless it was your job. So it's probably a good idea to work with an apartment locator. All right, so here's a bonus benefit and actually a very interesting story, right? So definitely hear me out on this, right? An apartment locator can actually very quickly look over your lease contract to make sure there isn't really anything, fishy or just flat out wrong in your contract over, the terms that you and the community agreed on, right? So let me tell you a very interesting story on how sometimes there are typos on lease contracts, okay? I once worked at a brokerage firm. A coworker of mine from the past actually had a client come back into the office because they were very, very confused on their lease contract that they were about to sign, because they actually had leased a 2-bedroom apartment for a $2,000 monthly, rent premium. But on the contract actually typoed and said $200 a month. And so this client was just looking for advice or feedback into what to do, right? So it's not uncommon to find typos in contracts. Typically, these are still today in 2022 human or like user generated at a lot of complexes still, right? So there's always human errors. It's very, very important to look at your contract and make sure you're not overpaying, right? But in this particular story, there was a typo that we saw that said $200 a month instead of $2,000 a month, right? And then so my coworker just advised them to sign the lease and turn it in, which they did, and the apartment staff actually had to go ahead and honor what they had written down on the contract. And so this tenant actually paid $200 a month for a $2,000 apartment because it was on an executed contract and the community had already signed off. So then there was 2 signatures and it was executed. So they got an absolute steal off of a typo. But the only reason that happened was because they used an apartment locator and trusted to get advice before going ahead and executing the contract. So that's actually what happened, and the community was actually okay with everything because it was on the executed contract. So I thought that was a very interesting story that I actually saw in real life. But it's very important because that typo could have easily, had an extra 0 on the right of it, and then they could have paid $20,000 a month, right? So the big thing is to look over your lease contract, at least all the major points before you sign a lease, because once that contract is executed and signed, probably off the software Blue Moon is what a lot of these communities use, it's a done deal and it's executed. So definitely give a copy of your lease contract over to your apartment locator, and then they can make sure if you're getting exactly what you guys agreed on, or maybe you're getting a steal, right? Like that lucky client from back in the day, or maybe you're overpaying, so an apartment locator can have your back that way as well. So I hope you guys really appreciated these benefits that you might not have actually thought of, unless you worked with a real estate agent that full-time focuses on studying apartment deals and all the intricacies and the ins and outs of the industry, right? So I hope you appreciated this video. This is the second part of how apartment locating is revolutionizing real estate, and I will see you guys on the next one. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this video on how apartment locating is revolutionizing real estate. And if you have any other questions, just go ahead and drop me a comment below in this video right now. I will personally answer it. And And better yet, you might as well just join our Apartment Locator Facebook group, because we actually go live twice a month and answer more questions twice a month for free. So click the link below this video or check the pinned comment below the video. I'll leave the link to the Apartment Locator Facebook group. And if you want a deeper dive in it, if this business could be a good fit for you, then consider checking out the 60-minute long webinar presentation, which is going to break down the business and how to succeed as an apartment locator, so that way you can have a competitive advantage over the other 1 million realtors that don't even know about this business model. So I'll see you guys on the next one.